Wake up! Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. I'm Adam Weinrib, joined as I am every Monday, Wednesday, Friday by FanSided's MLB insider Robert Murray. And the New York Mets and Texas Rangers decided to make our Sunday night interesting, swapping Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien. The contracts do not provide a whole lot of financial relief for either team. Were the Rangers seeking it? Are they seeking more? What's next for both parties? We will break it all down here live on the show. Appreciate you joining us on a holiday week. Thanksgiving is Thursday. No show Wednesday. We got travel plans. Like everybody's running around. We will resume in full the week after Thanksgiving. For now, we appreciate everybody joining us today to break down this trade, non-tender possibilities, and what Robert Murray is hearing. But I can't do that. Only Robert Murray can do that. Robert, how you doing?
I'm great, man. It feels good to be here. We got our first true, real blockbuster of the offseason, and boy, was it a doozy. It was one that kind of could see coming, but not necessarily that magnitude of a deal, or how it ended up looking. But very exciting to break that all down. Very excited to break down everything that I'm hearing around the league. And also, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving before we really dive into this. Hopefully everyone eats turkey. I will say that mashed potatoes remain overrated, so we're starting the show off with a food take. But let's talk baseball, because I think that's what everyone is here for. Adam Weinrib, happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Yeah, mashed potatoes kind of just like a gravy base. Obviously you're eating the gravy and it happens to come on mashed potatoes, sort of a gravy conveyance. I'm a corn pudding guy. A lot of people are not really aware of that as a side. It's damn good. Sweet potatoes, stuffing, cornbread stuffing with sausage. But give it to me, and I'll be eating it all on Thursday. We hope you all will be as well. Thank you for joining us again right here on YouTube 3 times a week, all off season long. And then Robert Murray does a Q&A at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays in the Discord. So if you want access to that, you want to bother us between shows, hit that join button below the show, become a member, and hit us with your questions. Also, come to the comment section. We're happy to answer some of your questions. We've got some already in here. We will pop these in as the show continues. We are also, you can read us on the Baseball Insiders feed on fansided.com/baseball-insiders, and you can get it all delivered to your inbox from the Moonshot, Fansided MLB's email newsletter. People are mad about stuff already. I think that's 3 beans I'm seeing as an emoji. Look, we got a lot to cover. We will get to the comments, at least the ones I understand. Let's talk about this trade first. The comments are missing my beard. Guys, I'm sorry. It's not fun to have a long, unkempt beard. I got to get more professional at trimming it. I'm going to be honest with you. If I could trim it, like if I had that ability, then I would wear it. But it's really hard. It was starting to look terrible, and I had some in-person meetings last week. I don't want to be wearing a grody beard too. So apologies, but I hope you all forgive me. And I hope that the Mets fans who were angry at the Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien trade will eventually forgive David Stearns and Steve Cohen. This one is interesting. We knew the Rangers were looking to save money. A lot of people were focusing on, hey, maybe they trade Corey Seager. Yankee fans were thinking, hey, maybe they trade Corey Seager. What happens from now, I'm not certain, but Marcus Semien, age 35, coming off a down year offensively, but a Gold Glove winning season defensively, goes to the Mets in exchange for Nimmo 1-for-1, 3 years of Semien's deal, 5 for Nimmo, as he goes now deep in the heart of Texas for a Skip Schumacher team that does not appear to be rebuilding, potentially reloading, helping to fix that budget up. What can you tell us about what is next for both teams here and your reaction to the trade?
Yeah, this one's going to be a long-winded answer, so bear with me. But the trade, it didn't necessarily, from the Semien aspect of it, catch me off guard. Like the Semien for Brandon Nimmo, that definitely was what caught me and a lot of people around the game by surprise. And as far as this trade goes, it frees up more payroll room for the Texas Rangers. And that was the priority for Texas. They wanted to shed payroll so they could cut payroll and have some more flexibility to upgrade the rest of their team. And I mean, we'll see exactly what this looks like, but they're not going to have Adolis García, Jonah Heim, Marcus Semien, some of these relievers, Jacob Webb being one of them. It's going to look a lot different next year. And going forward now, they need to upgrade the offense because they definitely need more pop or more splash in there. I feel like that's a pretty safe thing to say for them. They need to redo the bullpen, and they got to just figure out exactly like who to target. And to me, the really good fit here would be a guy like Luis Urias for Texas. That was where my mind immediately went. He's kind of like a different version of Semien in the fact that he's still very good offensively, but he provides nothing defensively. And that to me seems like a pretty clear fit. He's got connections to Skip Schumacher as well. And that to me, I don't know of necessarily like talks or like anything there, but on paper, that fit makes a whole lot of sense. And now going to the Mets aspect of this, and well, also too, like Texas, in addition to Urias, they're also very open to like considering their options internally at second base as well, because they have. I want to make sure. I keep saying Josh Freeman, like the NFL quarterback, but Cody Freeman, and also Cody Freeman and Josh Smith are the two options internally there. There we go. I got it right. It took me a second, but we got there. But as far as the Mets go, their priorities have been to upgrade their defense, and they also really want to prioritize their pitching as well. And something that Stearns has said since his days in Milwaukee is that the run prevention unit is something that is extremely important to him. And as far as like this goes, like this is a defensive move, getting Semien there, and they still think there's some ability and upside there with the bat. He can get closer to what he once was. But moving on from a guy like Brandon Nimmo was really difficult for them because he's loved in that organization. He's someone that they've seen come up through the organization and just really blossom. And he did not expect to be moved. He was approached with a team early or late last week, I should say, and being told that, there was a trade in place with Texas and that needed his approval to go through. And he took some time to think about it. He talked to Jacob deGrom, among other people, and signed off on the eventual deal. And now, with the Mets, this opens up a whole different can of worms. And with them showing that they're not afraid to move on from Nimmo, like what exactly does that mean for a guy like Pete Alonso or a player like Edwin Díaz? And I think Will Salmon of The Athletic, who's a friend of the show, put it a really good way in saying that the lack of sentimentality with Nimmo could mean that they're more open to moving on from both of those guys. To my knowledge, they still remain interested in both. I would not rule out re-signing at least one, if not both. But especially if a guy like Díaz leaves, they can turn their attention to like a Robert Suarez type or Devin Williams, who Stearns has familiarity with from their days with the Milwaukee Brewers. So there's a lot of different possibilities here. But the lack of sentimentality there with Stearns, I think, is a good thing. I mentioned on a foul territory a little bit earlier, but it's I've seen GMs in baseball, but also like in different sports, make mistakes with players that they drafted or players that the organization was really attached to. And I'm not calling Nimmo a mistake by any means, but it's clear that Stearns wants to put the best product on the field, and he's not afraid of doing whatever he thinks is necessary to get that done.
Yes. Regular foul territory contributor Robert Murray, by the way. You might have heard him talk about that earlier on the show. How about that? Lack of sentimentality, interesting, but it does. A lot of Mets fans are sort of aggrieved. Okay, we've got all these middle infield prospects, but we trade for a 35-year-old defense first at this point in his career. Middle infielder getting rid of 5 more years of a player that we obviously love in Brandon Nimmo. Why can't we just call up Carson Bench and call it a day? I would say, I don't know how the Mets plan to spend their money, but I'd be willing to bet that this is not the end of the Mets spending their money, no matter how fiscally responsible Steve Cohen wants to be now. Now, how far do they go? They're going to need to earmark it, like you said, for relief targets. Robert Suarez, the connection is already coming to play. Devin Williams makes some sense. But do they reinvest in starting pitching? How about the top of Kyle Tucker's market or Cody Bellinger's market now that there's quite literally an outfield hole in New York? How high do you see them climbing in the free agent market this offseason?
I don't necessarily know if the big names are going to end up being like the most realistic options, but one thing we've come to realize with Steve Cohen is that nothing is off limits for them. And Stearns didn't rule out possibly re-signing both Díaz and Alonso, but also adding another big name to the roster as well. So that's just a luxury that the Mets have with a guy like Steve Cohen owning the franchise. Like, he's not afraid to spend, and he's not afraid to invest like significant resources into the roster. But that being said, though, you signed Juan Soto to that massive contract last year. You're expecting World Series immediately. To me, you have to go out and spend meaningful resources. You can't let either of those guys walk and then not upgrade the roster with like meaningful assets. So to me, they should do whatever they possibly can to add a big name. I don't know who that necessarily would be, but they like big stars in Queens, especially Steve Cohen. But yeah, I don't know what the most likely option would be at this point. But I do know that run prevention and specifically pitching and also defense are absolutely the priorities there with the Mets. I can say that with confidence.
It did feel like World Series or bust last year, and I think, let me check my notes, it ended up as bust. So whatever they can do to put it in the other direction is probably worth their time. Meanwhile, in Texas, the Corey Seager questions, these Jacob deGrom, the Nathan Eovaldi questions, I think people are going to ask about all these high-priced Rangers. But for now, they made a lot of their hay in the non-tender market over the weekend. Adolis Garcia, by far the biggest name that anybody non-tendered on that deadline day. Jonah Heim as well, even Josh Sborz. The Texas Rangers basically said goodbye to the 2023 World Series. They're now circulating that team trophy photo with everybody grayed out in black and white except for Corey Seager. And not a lot of faces remain, shockingly so, from a team that just competed a couple of years back. Garcia's market of all the non-tenders is the one that's most interesting to me. Do you think, I don't even know what kind of offer it would take to secure him now that he is untethered, but OPS is in the mid 600s back-to-back years. What is the market like for the hero of the 2023 postseason?
To me, I would expect a bunch of teams to be involved in that because a big obstacle was that salary because it was projected to be around $12 million for this coming season. And that to me was one of the primary reasons he wasn't moved. And Texas obviously wanted to shed as much of that as they possibly could. And they ended up releasing him. But now that he's a free agent, I would expect a bunch of different teams to be in the mix for that, because as far as his pure power goes, like he's one of the more physically gifted players in ball. Like there's not many people who can hit the home runs at the level that he can. And that to me would immediately suggest that there's going to be a good amount of interest. And I mean, we've seen a bunch of teams already connected. I would say the team that I would love to see pursue Adolis Garcia would be the Pirates. I think that'd be really cool for ball because they need pop in that lineup. And obviously, they've been connected to Kyle Schwarber. They've been connected to Josh Naylor, although, as Ken Rosenthal said, no offer was ever made there. If you were in the Discord, you would have known that about a week ago, that no offer was actually ever made. But that, like, they're obviously pursuing bats and, like, they're pursuing, like, meaningful bats. And, like, but Garcia would not be, like, the end-all, be-all. Like, he wouldn't be their big addition, at least in my eyes. And if you can sign him to a one-year contract, get him in Pittsburgh, and you add him and let's say a Ryan O'Hearn or add him and a different option on the market, your offense will look a lot different in Pittsburgh. And I hope it happens. I don't know if the Pirates are actually interested. That's just me connecting the dots. But as everyone in the comments here is saying, like Rays, Pirate, Padres, like you name it, like there's going to be teams that are going to be interested with him. And Colorado would be really fun to see him in that ballpark. And they just named a new manager today. Well, kind of a same manager, but new. I took the interim tag off of him. So there's going to be plenty of teams interested there.
Yeah, let's run it by Warren Schaefer and Paul DePodesta, see what they think. You get power with Garcia, but you also get aggression. You get angry pop. And I do think he'd be a nice fit in Pittsburgh, especially if they do not want to run it back with Tommy Pham. He could play a similar on-field role. I don't know what it'd be like in the locker room. Any other non-tender decisions that surprise you? The Yankees basically cleared out 3 years worth of bullpen acquisitions. Scott F. Ross, Mark Leiter Jr., Mike Tauchman leaving the White Sox. Surprised they didn't get more for that asset when they had the chance last summer, to be honest. Ramon Urías did change hands last year, went to Houston. They non-tender him. So any other names that popped up adding to the free agent market that surprised you, intrigued you? Mostly, though, it was some fairly expected decisions, I would say.
Yeah, it was very expected decisions. I would say like there was none that necessarily caught me off guard. In the week before the non-tenders, it was pretty clear that like this was going to be the direction that a lot of these were going to go, especially with Garcia and Jonah Heim. Like the Rangers, the only thing that would have changed it is if they ended up finding a trade partner. But obviously for neither of them, they did not find options there. But Ramon Urías ended up being one that caught me off guard. They just acquired him. I believe it was at the deadline. And obviously moved in a different direction there. With the Astros, but they've been shedding salary off of the major league roster, and they want to reinvest it back into the roster in different areas. So the money saved from Urias, but also from the trades that they've made, especially Mauricio Dubon, they're going to use all that money and just reinvest it back into the major league roster. Christopher Morel was one that kind of surprised me. Like he was the headliner going back for Isaac Paredes, I should say. And yeah, that was one that I didn't necessarily expect, but it didn't work out with him in Tampa Bay. He'll have a market. There's plenty of tools to work with him. I don't know if it'll be a major league or a minor league deal? I think that's a really good question there by obviously a burner. My guess is his talent, his upside warrants him a spot on a major league roster. So that's what I'm thinking there. The other one that caught me, I'm not going to say by surprise, but it caught my attention was JJ Bleday. He was someone who was a very high draft pick, showed some promise with the A's for sure, but it just never really panned out overall. They moved in a different direction there. I could absolutely see an organization seeing him as an upside play and banking on the talent and be thinking, oh yeah, we can end up getting the most out of him. So I would expect him to get a bunch of different interest. And I always say with a prospect who didn't necessarily work out, or a high-end prospect that didn't necessarily work out, but I could see the Brewers being involved in that. I could see like the Braves. I could see, like so many different teams being involved in that. So I think he'll have no problems finding work.
Former first-round pick outfielder that didn't work out, Brian Cashman on line one. Aaron Hicks 2.0. What do you want? What are you doing here? Yeah, appreciate all the questions. I was surprised to see Bleday sent aside after just like sort of one tough year. But yeah, non-tender, mostly just the housekeeping we expected. Now we see what comes of it. Let's get to a couple of your questions. Asking, can we see Adam with a mustache? No. Some other questions. Seattle re-signing Jorge Polanco, and what are they doing at third base? There was also a Jorge Polanco Rangers thought earlier in the comment stream. So latest intel on either Polanco's market or Seattle's plans, whatever fits better.
Yeah, the Mariners have made it clear that they want to bring back as much of that roster as they possibly can from last year. And they did so with Josh Naylor. Like, he was the number one priority there with Seattle. And now with Naylor re-signed, I have gotten the feeling that Jorge Polanco is going to end up being more of a priority than Eugenio Suarez. So I would expect Polanco to end up being the guy that they try to target. And considering just how important he was to the organization, both like in the locker room, on the field, and how important he was, and how they've celebrated and made it very clear that having him sign there and not go to the Astros was so important for them. And they identified him a couple of years ago at the trade deadline as a player that they thought could be meaningfully better than he once had showed. And didn't necessarily show it in the year that they acquired him, brought him back again, like prevented him from going to Houston. And he had a massive breakout season. So to me, he feels like a logical target for Seattle. I would call them probably like the leading candidate for him. I mean, I feel like that's not necessarily breaking news. It's not okay. I want to make this clear before that gets aggregated. Like, that's not me saying like that's the current state of talks by any means, but like considering their desire to bring back as much of the roster as they can, but also his impact there, that's exactly where I'm getting that from. So aggregators, I would not aggregate that. But that's just like my general feeling on the entire situation there.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of aggregators, I've noticed a disturbing trend of people asking Grok to summarize a YouTube video. That doesn't work. Like, Grok just tells you what's in the YouTube description. Sorry, everybody, you still have to watch or listen to the podcast, but you can do so on your favorite podcast platforms or subscribe right here to the Baseball Insiders on YouTube. Happy to tell you what's happening right now in the rumor mill on the show, but I don't think Grok is going to help you out. Might help you tell some sick party jokes, though. A couple of people want to know about the Toronto Blue Jays. They're sort of my lead dog for Kyle Tucker right now, just because the rest of the market doesn't really make sense. And if the Mets are not going to shop at the top of that market, that's still where they sit for me. But any idea what's going on north of the border?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's anything too new from what we've seen or what we've seen reported. Like, they are like Kyle Tucker is a player of interest for them. And if they don't get him, then Cody Bellinger turns into a realistic option there as well. And they're trying to add to the bullpen, and they're open to adding like a meaningful name back there. Who exactly that'll be, I don't know. Like, they never made an offer to Rysel Iglesias. I think that's pretty widely known at this point after some initial reports there. I still think a guy like Framber Valdez makes a whole lot of sense there for Toronto, like adding another high-end starter. And yeah, there's questions about that incident that happened with crossing up the catcher and everything. And I think that's part of why he was at the GM meetings, was to answer that, and like to talk with teams about that who may have had any potential concerns about it. But he will do very well in free agency. So I expect Toronto to be very active this offseason. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That is a place that players want to play. How can you not want to be in Toronto? Like, you have a team that's awesome. That was literally 2 inches away from winning a World Series. It's a great city, got great fan base. They are willing to seemingly spend this offseason as well. Like, it's got all the ingredients there of having a really productive offseason. So I've never understood the kind of, I don't know, the bad narrative that the Jays and fans, well, I don't know about Jays fans, but just like the Jays overall have gotten in recent years. I don't think it's very fair. And I think this offseason is going to end up reflecting that.
Anything else in your notebook? And how is Tatsuya Imai going to be able to stick it to the Dodgers, who apparently he has no interest in playing for and in fact wants to wipe off the face of the earth? Anything you're hearing on that chase or anything else that I didn't mention?
Yeah. Also, how cool are those? How cool is those comments? Like,
pretty good quotes.
Yeah, that was awesome. Canyon Swartz, you're going to be blocked for that comment about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep,
not very nice of you. Go Birds. But I would say my general sense of the market is that for the majority of the top end players, like, the markets really haven't moved overly too much, and that's not a surprise. It takes time for those high end markets to really develop. It's very rare that we see them sign early on into free agency. But I would expect after Thanksgiving and the time leading up to the winter meetings is when we're going to see things like really ramp up here. But the one thing I can confidently say is Kyle Schwarber has a lot of suitors. Like, he is going to do very well in free agency, and it remains a mistake for Philadelphia not to re-sign him before last season. I was adamant that they should. I didn't necessarily see 56 homers popping out, but man, he had a really awesome season, and he is going to be rewarded for it very, very handsomely this offseason.
And will that reward come in Philadelphia? That has yet to be determined. We appreciate everybody joining us. Of course, we will see you back here on the Baseball Insiders next week, but then 3 times a week from that point forward. And we're just 2 weeks away from the winter meetings. You'll see plenty of Robert and I during that period of time. Set your notifications, join the Discord, hit that join button right below us. Get that private Q&A every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be a bloodbath in there during the winter meeting. So please do join us here on the stream, on your podcast platforms. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.